We've come to the end of our 6 modules on making housing markets work in African cities, the role and opportunity of finance. You've heard from professors and policymakers, some bankers, a quantity surveyor, a couple architects, data scientists, a community development worker, and more than a couple economists, consultants, and researchers. Each of the people you've heard from in this course is somehow involved in the financing and delivery of affordable housing across Africa. But while they each work in their own particular sphere or geography, none of them can do it alone. So they, and you, need to understand the bigger whole in order to understand and grow the part that they, and you, play. The exciting thing about the housing sector is that it brings together so many other sectors: manufacturing, construction, land markets, labor markets, the legal system, the financial system. All of these different mini-economies coming together to deliver the thing that each and every one of us needs and wants: a place to call home. Or, as is rather the case in so many contexts, not coming together and not delivering housing that is affordable to the people who need it and in the places where they need it. So this is our challenge. So many moving parts and competing objectives, and a very obvious and universal target. Everyone needs and wants a place to call home that protects them from the elements and facilitates their personal growth and development as contributing members of society. Right at the beginning, in Module 1, Claudio Ascioli talked about this, how governments frame the right to housing, and how this has become codified in a series of international agreements. Now, at the end of these 6 modules, do you feel that you have the knowledge and the tools to start to think about how to give meaning to that commitment? With the mortgage to GDP ratio at less than 3% in most countries, there is huge scope for growth in the mortgage market. Some have estimated the potential for 6 million mortgages across Africa. As you heard from David Gardner and Keith Lockwood, just the production of housing that would be required to give expression to this potential demand could be a driving force in both GDP growth and employment, contributing considerably to national economies in the face of otherwise constraining conditions. Across the continent, refinance companies are being set up to enable the growth of the mortgage market, and various macroeconomic and land reforms are making it easier. The very significant rental market also creates interesting opportunities for commercial finance to support small-scale landlords build and manage affordable rental units. But even as lenders extend their products and services down market, and as governments support liquidity for mortgage lenders, it remains true that the vast majority cannot afford or otherwise access mortgage finance. We can see that there is affordability for credit. Growth in the microfinance and digital finance sectors has shown us that households are able to manage some debt. But today, when we talk about affordable housing, we still think about developer-driven, large-scale developments financed by mortgages. We do need those, but we also need whole other solutions for the larger majority. Without coming to terms with that very basic fact, we're unlikely to improve the housing circumstances of the some 60% of urban Africans who, as UN Habitat tells us, live in slums. So, in this context, and as you've heard from Dorothy Baziwe and Aminata Barrow, as well as many others, the majority of houses in Africa are self-built and self-financed, incrementally by households themselves. Their efforts are tremendous, but they're also inefficient. Could we figure out some way to harness this massive effort of small-scale operators and leverage it so that a wider array of people could benefit? This is a logistical and planning challenge. It is also a governance and regulation challenge, and it gets to the very heart of the developmental challenge. How to do what needs to be done in as efficient and effective a way as possible, given the competing pressures of the land market, the building industry, the labor market, the finance market, and so on. In Module 4, you heard how critical the value chain is, and how a weakness in any one link can add costs to or undermine the viability of any other. Developers themselves are wary of weak links, and so to afford the risk, they build for the rich where they can charge a margin. In this multi-sectoral, intricately layered and highly complex ecosystem, housing policy matters. In very many countries across Africa, housing policies are draft and remain so for the life of their implementation. This is a huge problem because when a policy is draft, the private sector is uncertain about the rules and unclear about the opportunities. When there is uncertainty, private players factor in a margin to cover the risk of something going wrong. And this is what makes housing expensive. At each link in the value chain, margin is built in to cover the risk of things going bad. A good housing policy and legislative framework and strong implementation arrangements can address this. As you think about the housing situation in your own local context, about the nature and the scope of the demand side, and the breadth and the capacity of the supply side, and as you think about the policies and laws that are in place and the administrative systems that are being implemented to a greater or lesser degree by the local authority, where for you is the key blockage? Where do you think there is the greatest opportunity? And do you have the data you need to understand the context? As you develop your analysis and build your strategy, I want you to think about three things. First, think about the ingredients you have. Who are the players in your housing sector, and what is their capacity? Don't just think about the large-scale builders. Think also about the small-scale builders and even the household. They are each playing a role in delivering the stock in your country. What can you do to help them do it better, faster, safer, and in a way that's more affordable? Then think about your market and where and how do people live and where and how do they earn? Where are they in the life stage of their family? Do the financial products that exist in the market meet the repayment capacities of your population? And what can people really afford? This is usually where we trip up. As policymakers or as developers, we assume, hope for, that people can afford more than they really can. We need to be real about affordability and then develop products and services, systems and processes that match that reality. And finally, pay attention to the whole value chain, from land through to life and all the steps in between. It is a whole ecosystem that needs to work together. You fit somewhere in there. Think about where that is and the role that you play and how you might streamline the processes around you so that you can be a part of making housing markets work in Africa.